The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, everybody, and let me introduce our interviewee today, Lynn Heureux, who's going for the Board of Education.
Yes.
And tell the people a little bit about yourself, Lynn, and why you're running for the board and what you hope to do.
Sure. So my name is Lynn L Heureux. I live here in Nashua, New Hampshire. I moved in 1999. I'm married. I have 2 kids in the high school system. They're both at Nashua High School South. I have a freshman boy and a junior girl. I was a book designer by trade. I worked for Pearson Education for several years. I was home with them while they were growing up and working at night. I became a registered nurse about 5 years ago, a little less than that. And I work here at St. Joseph's Hospital in the emergency department and the ICU.
Oh boy, that must be a little active.
Yes, it's busy for sure.
Yeah. Well, and what do you think that will happen when you get elected to the Board of Education?
I'm not sure what will happen. It depends what other candidates are elected to the board. I'm hoping what will happen is that we'll be able to have more open and productive discussions and move towards some creative solutions to some of the issues that the Nashua School District is facing today.
A little bit more of talking about the problems and different ways of solving the problems, I hope.
Yes.
Because
that would be my goal.
I don't see too many of those discussions. They think they have everything all planned out, and they have a lot of problems. The
board right now seems to be very reactive. And that is to say, a lot of times we can see potential issues coming down the road, but they aren't addressed maybe in a timely fashion, or certainly not as early on as they could be. It's almost like there's no foresight. And so these problems tend to snowball. It becomes very evident that there is a problem, and then I feel like that is when the board becomes reactive. And they're trying to solve a situation that perhaps could have been solved more easily if they had thought about it before.
Do they discuss enough of the different types of solutions that they may have to the problems? I think they come in a little bit too focused on a solution, and they sort of dominate the talk.
I think that there is very little discussion on all ranges of topics. I think that there's very little public input. I don't think they're very receptive to it. And so as a parent, some of the decision making that I've seen come out of the Board of Education seems rather arbitrary, only because I don't think that they communicate effectively with their constituents. And so I'd like to see a change in that. I could understand policy more, and I could get behind the board more if I knew what the problems were, other than being able to self-identify them as a candidate now, and if I knew what was driving the decisions that they were making. But we don't really have any of that right now. And I seek to change that. I want transparency.
Oh, what do you think the children are getting out of all this confusion, I guess I might say?
Well, I think it is confusing for the children, and I think it's just as confusing for the parents. Children are just happy to be back in school. One of the main reasons I decided to run is because I felt that children should have returned to school and could have returned to school safely much sooner than they did. The Nashua School District decided to remain closed for far longer than most of the other communities in Nashua, and that was unfortunate for a lot of the kids in the district. I was working in the emergency department full time during the pandemic. I only moved to the ICU this January. And I saw a huge increase in kids presenting with suicide ideation.
Really?
The basis of which was panic, anxiety, depression. All of these led to children wanting to end their lives. Huge, huge increase.
No kidding. I
And
didn't realize
can't,
that.
yes. And I saw it. I took care of these kids. Unfortunately, as time went on, it became part of the national agenda, right? People began to discover that kids weren't doing well not being in school. Communities knew that they needed to act. Some did it better than others. It would seem that Nashua chose not to reopen up until the time the governor decided to place an order requiring them to return to in-person learning last April. And that was not the right choice to make.
I know that it was important for them to get back to school. That's a big part of their life. Of
Absolutely.
Growing up, working with other kids and seeing how to interact with them.
Yes. In terms of socialization, growth, and development, it's very early, or it's very important early on, especially in the little ones. In the high school kids, which of mine are, being with their friends is everything. It might not seem like a lot, but any parent could tell you the same. It's everything. And so my child felt alone, both of my children, but my son fared a little bit better than my daughter. My daughter didn't do well with this at all.
Well,
I had her in 2 outpatient programs. I had her she was placed in an inpatient treatment program because she was one of the children, unfortunately, that tried to end her life. And so this is...
Well, you have some experience that really is valuable to this.
I do, and I have some very
argument.
strong feelings. But I'm also open-minded, and I look forward to coming up with creative solutions, not just running in circles.
Right.
Like we seem to be doing right now.
Yeah. Well, have you talked to some of the other people that are running, and you have some idea of which ones you would like to see join you at the new Board of Education?
Yes, I've spoken to several of them, at least 7 of them.
And they feel that this is very important to make sure you have a nice, organized school board that's not fighting,
Yes.
that's having solutions coming up, that's concerning the children,
Yes.
as well as the teachers.
The 7 people that I've spoken to, 6 or 7, all agree that what is happening, what is going on right now, or the way the board is functioning right now is not working.
And it should be a big change, let's say.
Correct.
And,
There needs to be.
Yeah. And how do you think that might start? What would you think be the first thing that should happen to the process, I guess you might say?
I think that the Board of Education needs to communicate more effectively with the parents. That will take care of the transparency piece that seems to be lacking. I also think that the Board of Education and some of the administrators, not teachers per se, love our teachers. I support them 1,000%, and I would always take a teacher's word over my kid's word. But I feel like I've attempted to make contact with some of the administrators, haven't heard back. Some of my friends have done the same, get no response. I have a friend who emailed the administrators at her son's elementary school multiple times over multiple days, did not hear anything back, emailed Frank Edelbutt, got a response that day. He called the administrator at the school, and then they replied to my friend. So I feel as though there isn't any accountability either. We are supporting the schools through our taxpayer funding. And it's important to me that there's accountability and that they are reaching out to parents. So transparency and accountability go hand in hand for me.
You think maybe they should have a different format for the meetings? Because one of the things I've heard is that they don't have enough time during the regular session. Would it be better if they had maybe an open house for communication with the parents?
I don't know how I would tackle that. I do think that one thing that could be done is to put the agenda out a little bit sooner so that parents could formulate questions or further decide whether this is a meeting they need to go to, or otherwise have more time to prepare and get involved. Another way we could allow parents to be more informed is if the board perhaps sent out an email maybe once per month to let parents know what's on their radar, things that they're working on, issues that are concerning at this time. Those two would go a great deal, would go through, help parents, help parents get a handle of what's going on.
Yeah.
And if I had a Board of Education that did that, I could fully support them. I could fully stand behind them. And I would. It's just we don't have that right now. And so the decision-making seems rather arbitrary.
It's kind of hard to turn a group that's moving so much in one direction. And
Yes.
you want to get feedback and react to it. And as you said, transparency. Let us know what you're thinking, and we'll tell you whether we agree or not agree.
Right.
And work out the details of that.
Right.
Because you do have to have agreement between both sides. And
Absolutely.
This big.
Yes.
And do you notice any difference between grammar school and high school? I mean, now, because your kids just went through the transition over the last couple of years.
Well, I mean, I think that one difference is I was in constant contact with my kids' elementary school teachers. That tends to level off in the middle school and then the high school level as kids become more independent and learn to have their own voice. They can speak to their teachers. They can handle their own problems. I've been a huge proponent in teaching my kids to do that so that they can solve problems on their own. And I think that just comes with the process of getting a little bit older as kids age up. But am I still involved? Yes. I go to the open houses. I know who my kids' teachers are. If my child doesn't feel like they're able to handle a problem, I will intervene, but only if they ask. They usually don't.
But with the way it was with remote learning and everything, that sort of messed that up, that communication chain.
It did, but I may have actually communicated with my kids' teachers more during remote learning because my kids struggled. And so we had to find ways to help them through that.
Right.
And so in that respect, I was in constant contact with especially my son's teams, and they were great at responding. Teachers were fabulous through the remote learning process. Yes, absolutely. It's just that kids needed to get back.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure how how's your communication with the voters now? How's that doing?
Well, you mean in terms of getting out and asking people to vote for me? Well, I'm enjoying going door to door. I see some people don't have the same position that I do, and that's fine. But when you meet someone face to face, it's very different than speaking to someone in Facebook land. I feel like I try to avoid Facebook a little bit because I feel like there are some keyboard warriors who are ready to attack anything that you say, but if you were face to face with that person, they might not react the same way, and they certainly wouldn't say the things to your face that they're writing on Facebook. So I'm really enjoying going door to door.
Okay.
And I find that there is a middle road, and people are willing to talk. We just have to convey that in the public setting.
Right. I see.
Yes.
Do you have any? Do you need any help? Do you have some people helping you pass out literature or anything like that?
I do have people helping me. I have a group of 4 friends that are helping me. I'm doing some door knocking. I'm doing a lot of door knocking on my own. I'm doing some door knocking on Friday. Well, I go every day that I can. Sometimes I can only go for an hour. Sometimes I can get a few hours in. But my daughter's going to be coming with me this weekend. And I hope to just hit as many houses as I can.
Yeah. I know that campaigning is tough, and to do the whole city is even tougher.
It is. It's when I think about where I'm going to go next in terms of door to door or which neighborhood I'm going to hit next, it's daunting because it is a citywide election. Yes.
And you got to spread yourself out so that each ward hears a little bit about.
That's right. So I do have cards that I hand out.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Have you? Do you want some people to talk to you? Do you have a way of getting communications that way?
I would love people to talk to me.
How would they contact you?
They can send me a message through my Facebook page. They can also email me at my email address.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your email address?
My email address, I'll spell it. It's lynn.LHeureux at mac.com.
Okay.
mac.com.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. And people will be able to hear a little bit about your answer to some of their questions.
Yes, actually, that'd be, yes. Yeah. I'd love to talk to them.
Okay. And do you have any other way of communicating with the voters?
Well, they can find me on my Facebook easily. They can find my Board of Education page.
Okay.
And certainly send me a message through there, or even just post to the page.
Okay.
I try to reply to everyone.
Okay.
I do reply to everyone.
And you're going around getting a little bit of communication through the media, other media than Facebook?
I did a radio show today.
Yeah, good.
I'm doing this right now. I'm doing Nashua Education Television. And on my Facebook page, I try to provide information on some of the things that are important to me outside of the election so that people can get to know me as a person and not just one side of me as a candidate.
And the election is coming up. Are you going to have enough people there at the different election sites?
Yes, I do have a team for us that I'll hopefully have one person holding signs at every school.
Okay,
yes.
Good. So people get to know you a little bit, know your name.
Yes.
And that's, name recognition is the part of it.
Absolutely. And that's the door-to-door piece.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so what are you finding? You finding anybody that is anti-change?
No, not necessarily anti-change. The majority of the people that I speak to have an understanding that the board, as it's functioning right now, is not effective. And that's pretty much across the board. One of the positions that I take is that I'm a pro-mask choice advocate, only because my daughter can't tolerate them. I've come into contact with lots of other parents whose kids can't tolerate the mask. My daughter tried to harm herself, not just because of the mask. It was a snowball effect of not being in school, but the mask was the precipitous event because it caused her panic and anxiety, and this just snowballed. She's actually on 2 medications now, and that's how she's able to go to school.
Cool.
She wants to be in school, and so this was the best solution for our family. So it's my view that the mask mandate is not working for a great deal of the kids, and that there needs to be a compromise. And to me, mask choice is the compromise. The people who choose to wear them are protected, and the people like my kid and lots of other kids in the community that can't tolerate them can feel normal again. It also removes the stress on the teacher.
Right.
For a teacher with 30 students has to be continuously surveilling their classroom, right? To make sure that the masks are on, they're covering their nose, they're not sitting under the chin. You can't communicate effectively with them. So I feel like if it was a choice, parents could, or children would be able to tolerate, the kids who can't tolerate the masks now would be able to function better, focus on their work, be more productive, feel less stress. And that would go for the teachers as well. They wouldn't have to continuously surveil these kids, constantly reminding them to keep their masks on. This is true especially for the little ones. The high schoolers, you know, they'll wear them, they'll follow the rules a little bit more. But the little ones, I can imagine it's got to be hard to constantly monitor them. And they shouldn't be wearing them anyway. It stunts their growth. It stunts their social and emotional development. But if it were a choice, teachers could focus their energies on teaching teaching their content. The teachers are just as stressed out as the kids. I
think that's something that a lot of people just don't grasp at all. You know, they're not anyway sensitive to that.
No, and it's odd because I feel like pre-pandemic, if there was a group of kids who was being affected by something other than the mask, teachers and parents would be up in arms, and we would be doing whatever we could to make those kids more comfortable and to make their ability to learn the best that it can be.
Right.
But now the attitudes have changed, and it's just, you know, kids are fine. Kids need to wear masks. Just do it and shut up. And that's not how it should be.
Right.
And like I said, 2 years ago, this would have never happened. We would not be where we are today.
And your perspective is enhanced by your job, too.
Absolutely. That's why I feel so strongly about it.
Yeah, you saw more examples of it than probably any other type of person. Yes.
Unfortunately, the way HIPAA works, the way Obamacare works and the Portability Act is that it's not easy to extract data from medical records. It took 3 to 4 months just to write the algorithms to extract COVID data for communities to use. So, and because we're still focused on COVID, even though I would argue we're in endemic stage now, not pandemic, it'll be years before we see the actual effect on the children. But I saw it firsthand, and so I feel like I'm fighting an uphill battle to make people realize what's going on with them.
Well, that even the collection of data is a political issue now.
It is. It is. Unfortunately, everything's a political issue.
And, they're saying that they still don't have an analysis whether a person really died of the virus versus other physical problems.
The virus is definitely real. I can tell you as a nurse. But it's a 99.95% survival rate for the 80 and under set. Kids aren't the primary transmitters. They aren't the primary carriers. And without a citywide mask mandate, there's no telling if the case numbers that we have going through the schools right now are actually contracted at the schools. They're probably not. They're probably contracted outside of the schools. And with case numbers as low as they are, I believe there's 25 last week, out of 11,000 students, that's a 0.0043 infection rate. And so what are we doing? What are we doing?
I think we're overly focused on one thing.
Yes. And I feel like the Board of Education also needs to step away from the mask issue. If it were just a mask choice, then they would be able to move on to more pressing issues like staffing. Staffing is a huge issue right now. And also disruptive behavior.
Well, definitely.
That's also a huge problem. So teachers have their hands full. We don't need to be uber focused on the masks. They aren't. There's a question of their efficacy anyway.
Would there be any reason to have some kind of separation of the people with masks and the people without masks?
No. Some studies say that the 6-foot distancing is also an arbitrary number.
Right.
And the WHO has always recommended 3. So
You have every
the data is all over the place.
Right, yeah.
And this is why none of the rules make sense to parents. Yeah.
No consistency on that.
That's correct.
At all, and no proof. Nobody coming out with, as you say, it's hard to collect data, which would make people feel comfortable that the rules are needed.
Correct.
And
until we can collect data,
yeah.
I believe that it's incumbent upon the Board of Education to listen to all parent concerns.
Right.
I know that their decision does not come lightly. Whether or not they vote to make masks mandatory or make mask a choice,
Yeah.
they're going to anger
Somebody, yeah.
they're going to anger somebody.
Yeah.
But choice is the only compromise.
Well, that's sort of what New Hampshire is.
Yeah.
We're a state that tries to let the people rule themselves.
And people should rule themselves. Medical autonomy is a real thing. And I don't think that it's a good idea to turn our school district and by extension our schools into little tiny hospital microcosms. It just takes away from their education. And with schools being so short-staffed, why are we doing this?
Right.
They need to be focused on instruction.
And have the parents get something in here.
Yes.
Now they control their family.
Absolutely.
So
That's all we want.
So that's what you're doing.
Yes.
Good luck on your election.
All right.
And we hope to see you again sometime maybe before the election.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much, Lynn.
All right.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.